Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, securities analyst, and advisor, Morty Davis is a Wall Street legend. In addition, Mr. Davis is an outstanding economist and highly articulate, incisive, and very entertaining political analyst and strategist. He's Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through The Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical economic and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on the news making the headlines is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Hello again. It's Wednesday, 6:30. No holidays to stop our podcast, as we've had some in the recent past, and we can enjoy spending an hour together. I love it because you're amongst some of my favorite people in the whole world. Other than my immediate family and kids and grandkids, you fall into the category of my number one choice of people I like to be with. So it's good to be back with you again, and we can enjoy. That's putting it, that word, question, because I don't know how we enjoy the nature of this podcast, which deals with the week's events, which always inevitably involved disasters and disappointments and human difficulties and every kind of tragedy. So if it does the same to you, which I would expect if you're human, then it certainly has the effect of depressing, despite all the advancements we've made in civilization over the centuries since Adam and Eve, we haven't become better, apparently, at avoiding human disasters, some by nature that are part of the real world, and some brought about by the behavior of our leaders and our people that accept that position, that we created much of our own aggravation and headaches and disappointments, loss of life. The fact that we have more guns in America than anywhere else in the world, and we lose more lives, most tragically of young kids and their teachers, but in general, innocent civilians, to gun availability and gun usage without any provocation. So that's just one indication of the sad commentary that I feel we justifiably have about human behavior. And that's not limited to just the availability of guns, which, remarkably, there are more guns in the United States than there are a number of people, even including infants and children. Counting them all, we have more guns if you count all of them, which gives us a much bigger population than the one that's likely to have guns or permitted to have guns. So that's just one indication. The perennial wars we have in this world is another indication. Others that are unrelated to our own behavior, which can be dealt with more effectively often, are the natural disasters of nature and life, Walking across the street in any street in the United States can get one killed. So we can't avoid disaster, but there are most disasters and terrible events that occur to the human people, to us as individuals, that we did little to provoke, but it's part of the reality of life. But those that are unavoidable, we can do the best, and we often do. We keep making better ways to defend against floods and fires and even tornadoes, because we learned how to deal with them technologically and supervisingly avoid those events or make them less devastating. So right off the bat, as I do every week, while I invite you back for the weekly podcast, and I love you, I appreciate your involvement, because you're immensely helpful to me and to this podcast by the comments you send me and the calls you address to me that help me become wiser, not wise enough, but wiser than I would otherwise be. So thank you all for the tremendous positive role that you all play as cohorts in the development and the experience of this podcast. So without further ado, let's get on to this so-called enjoyable experience, or at least this experience, whether it's enjoyable necessarily or not. I hope it's something that we can appreciate, you and I, as we analyze and go over the events of the week, of the prior week, which, as I always tell you, I apologize in advance for adding to your negative feelings, your depression, which our reporting at this of the weekly news is inevitably, even though we do not intend to be, is enough to depress any normal human being, as it does me. And I assume most of you are at least as normal as I am. So without further ado, I want to get on to the news of the week, which this podcast deals with, the important news of the week as it's defined by the choice of the media, and it's really the important news because it affects all of us significantly, all of us, including our immediate family, our children, our friends, our neighbors, our fellow citizens, and our fellow human beings throughout the world. So without further ado, after I gave you that apology, and I'm going inevitably to depress you by what we report, there's no way I can report the news of the week and the exciting breaking news that's always interrupting our viewing of our network programs, our cable that is always broken into, or is, not always, but is so often broken into as we're watching other enjoyable or even knowledge-enhancing events on our media outlets, our newspapers, our magazines, our, I guess the biggest news is always the breaking news that's enough felt to be important enough to interrupt even our most loved programs and ones that we would hope are not interrupted by these harsh developments, which are usually the breaking news, like floods or disasters or mass shootings, all the things that the media each week, each day of our lives chooses to determine is so important that we have to hear it instantly. So again, without further ado, I apologize for bringing you, imposing on you the information and the reporting we do on this podcast. That, as I say, if you're at all normal, as I like to think I am, you may be even more normal, is so hurtful and anything but uplifting. And so that's the reason I have this book in front of me that I was inspired to write, to lift human beings out of their depressed state, as so many of us are voluntarily or involuntarily. As I was when I was young, I was always depressed, not only by events that occurred or are about to occur, but by life, the insecurities of life. When you're young, you don't know what life's going to bring, and you're made aware of the disasters by constant intrusions that you can't avoid, sent to us, delivered to us, as vital for us to hear instantly because they break into all our daily activities, the ones that we enjoy and the ones we learn, everything. So that's what inspired me to write this book, to devote 12 years of my life exclusively to all of the philosophers and wisdom, biblical, philosophical, the great thinkers of going back to the inception of the human race, including some of our wisest forefathers, like the Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle and our priests and rabbis and all of the people, teachers, professors that make every attempt to bring us as much knowledge with the least aggravation possible for our benefit, but nevertheless have this impact as this podcast has of causing us depression. And it wasn't, I had that state all the time. I was always depressed or frightened about the future of life when I was young. And I heard all the terrible things that were happening in the world, wars and killings, and there was no limit, you know. I left school one day, and a young woman was run over by a trolley car. In those days, we had trolley cars. I don't know if you know what they are, but they were cars that ran with electrical connections with overhead wires. And that was a major source of transportation, local transportation in those. And I heard she was a young woman and a mother. And I was starting to cry. I was worried, oh, maybe it's my mother coming to school to pick me up. So there was a lot to be depressed upon, especially since I was born at the time of the Great Depression, and people suffered immense poverty, even starvation. So you didn't have to be paranoid to be worried and aggravated and frightened by the times and the future. It wasn't until one day I ran into a book by a famous and brilliant bishop, Catholic bishop, Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. He said, no matter what, his book really, to summarize it, said, is one that urges you to think positively about every event, even ones that seem disastrous, how to reinterpret it for your benefit and for your future benefit, how to avoid disasters, how to improve your own behavior. So ever since I read that book, any event that occurs, even tragedies, I try to think, how is that positive? How has that made my life, or how is it going to make my life even better than it was, or much better than it was? And so that, along with a book by one of the great authors of my youth, Dale Carnegie, who wrote a bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People, but one that's addressed this specific topic that I'm talking about, how to be happier. He wrote a book, Stop Worrying and Start Living. So those two books, once I digested them, changed my life, changed my attitude, and made me a more contented, happier person. And so I tried to do that for the people I loved, my family, my kids, my best friends, my neighbors, my fellow Americans, my fellow human beings throughout the world. I devoted 12 years researching all of those ideas. One's like Bishop Sheehan's The Power of Positive thinking, and Dale Carnegie's Stop Worrying and Start Living. And the book in front of you, if you're watching on screen, and the bottom of the cover, in addition to Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back, says at the lower part of the page, which you may not see on your screen, says how to be happy no matter what. That was my objective in writing this book, because reading those two books and others after that changed my life and has made it more content. I don't say use happiness, because in this country, in the United States, we think of happiness as people who are inebriated with drugs, with liquor, somebody who just had a pint of vodka, or is on addictive drugs like marijuana or cocaine, and it seems so happy. They're laughing and joking and patting each other on their back. And after the effects of those momentary fixes, afterwards leaves them in worse shape than ever, because they're just as miserable, except now they have headaches and further depression from the after effects of those fixes. Liquor gives you headaches and nausea, even to the next morning or beyond, and drugs even kill you. They momentarily give you a lift so you think you're in heaven, but they have no lasting effects except negative effects. So I spent 12 years researching it. I didn't even ever finish, because after 12 years I was still researching and finding new productive ideas from so many others, philosophers, authors, writers, just about every biblical scholar, priests, rabbis, even those of other religions, which preach how to be happy, how to live more productive lives and less hurtful lives, self-hurtful and hurtful to others. So after 12 years, I was still researching it, and then one time, one of my daughters, who's an author, who's written a number of exciting books, really great books on life, read what I had done for those 12 years, and she said, "Dad, why don't you publish it? I just read your book that you're almost finished, or I don't know, it looks to me like you're finished, or it should be finished and issued, published. It's so fabulous. It gave me so many great ideas and such a lift. So why don't you publish it?" And I said, "Well, I will shortly." She said, "Well, do it now, because it's phenomenal." And with that, she joined me for the next 2 years, so I make sure that I would finish it. And now I put her in as a co-author, Rookie Renov. She's phenomenal. So I offer this to you as something that changed my life, made it happier, or better still, more content. So as soon as the program's over, run out and get the book, and I promise you, you'll be ever grateful to me. But if that's not so, I will give you the best deal ever. just send me back your purchase slip or the purchase slip of the person that bought it for you and gifted it to you, and I will send you back double the amount on that purchase slip, whether you spent it or the giftee to you spent it. So it's a win-win situation. And you can keep the book, even if you just want to get your money back, double your money back, and want to say you didn't benefit. So without further ado, let's get on with the news of the week that I started off apologizing for, even though I didn't develop most of that. I'm just pointing it out because that's the nature of this podcast, dealing with the news of the week that inevitably must, if you're normal, depress you as it does me every week.
All right. Thank you, Morty. So, we've been away for a couple weeks for the Passover and Easter holidays, but now we're back and ready to solve the world's problems again.
Great to be back with you.
Because in our absence, there's been a lot more problems that we haven't been able to solve.
It's great to be with my favorite people, my cohorts that contribute so much to the progress and to the wisdom of this program.
So let's start with a big, as we like to often do, like kind of just an overview, big picture, get your take on, it was 7 weeks ago that the U.S. started the conflict in Iran, and at that time, President Trump said that it will be over quickly. 4 to 6 weeks was his estimate.
However, it's still the news of the week.
Yes. So the question is, we're now week 7, so it's a week after the outside estimate of the time frame for the completion. So are you surprised that it's now week 7 and we're still where we are, given what President Trump originally said or promised the American people?
I'm not at all surprised because unlike the wars where we've been most successful, we put in the leadership. Here we did everything. We won the war in the first day of the bombing, as Trump so rightly pointed out. We destroyed their military, their navy, their army, their missile delivery, and all of their leaders, 41 leaders. It was miraculous. I thought we won the war. But unlike the wars where we really won, like during the Second World War, where we demanded unconditional surrender, and after we won the military part of it, we put in our own leaders to run Japan and Germany with our people running the country for 8 years before there were elections, unlike the current wars where we win militarily, and the next thing is we're calling the people of that country to select new leaders with often the same objectives as the ones we just defeated. And there's no major change, as there were in those two cases, where after 8 years of Douglas MacArthur taking over and running Japan, and then having a vote, and 8 years in Germany before, the people were sufficiently responsive to the Allies and their goals, selecting a leader after we provided a leader for 8 years. Those were win-wins, and it was over.
So President Trump...
Since then, we haven't had a war that was over because it was no unconditional, and we didn't put in the leaders. And every time they say, what's going to be at the end of this? If we go by experience, nothing changes because we put in new leaders that adhere to some of the old concepts.
Right. So both President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth have said there has been regime change. Both of them have said that. I mean, given what we saw happening, yes, the first layer of government was killed.
Wiped out.
The next layer killed.
Well, the main layer, 41.
But then it keeps coming.
41
it seems like
of the all of the important leaders were killed in the first hour of the bombing.
Does that constitute regime change?
Not if you don't put in alternative, better leaders.
President Trump says we have had regime change, that the people now are much more rational and less radical. That's what he said.
Even the Iranian people don't feel they have a new regime.
Yeah.
These are the same people that killed so many of them in the weeks before the Americans came in.
So why would he say we have regime change? Just so that it sounds good?
I don't know why he says that, because it is a change from the leadership that was there before, and they're not there anymore.
I think it's actually...
It's not a change.
I think it does a disservice to his whole strategy, because I think I would agree that in order to have real change in the country, you need true regime change, not just people change, but regime change, meaning the philosophy of the country, of the government has to change. And when the president, which I think he went in with the right idea to take this bad government out.
He was in a position to do.
But by basically saying we have regime change, he puts himself, like he's saying he's done, but he's not done.
And there's no end. That he can't define an end, because in Japan and Germany, we had a defined end, unconditional surrender.
I mean, he has said that. He has said he wants unconditional surrender, but doesn't seem like...
But he didn't act on...
Correct. Doesn't seem like...
On taking advantage of that unconditional.
Right. I mean, we saw from the talks last weekend that, the U.S. has a series of demands, most of which I think are good. No nuclear weapons ever. Reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
No materials even.
Give us
back. They can retain them.
Right. No enrichment, and give us the dust to the nuclear.
They can retain any zero nuclear.
Right. And not
unlike what Biden or his successors did, which allowed them
under the JCPOA, under the Obama plan. So Iran's counter proposal was they want sanctions lifted, they want war reparations, they want U.S. forces withdrawn from the region, they want to control the strait, and they want to be able to enrich uranium. So, but other than that, we've agreed on everything.
Right, they're imposing, as if they were winners, and they're imposing their demands.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the interesting thing is even in the more recent meetings that had some promise, they say the United States is not trustworthy. That's what is it?
Pot calling the kettle black?
That's it.
Yep. One of the things I heard, because now they're talking about a round 2 of talks, even though Vice President Vance left Pakistan after 21 hours of negotiations with basically nothing accomplished. And then...
and before that, Jared Kushner and
Well, he was there too.
Whitcomb.
Woodcock
But
were
that
both
was
there.
before Vince got involved.
Yeah, but they were all three of them were there over last weekend. So what I heard some talk was that things on the table involved not necessarily a permanent ban on enrichment, but something like 20 years. So
But Trump hasn't agreed to that.
No. Well, no. Do you think? I mean, why would that even be? Even do you think entertained? Because 20 years. I mean, a lot can happen in 20 years, but
No, but even then, you would keep some of the nuclear for 20 years from now. That doesn't mean.
So suppose they gave up. Suppose they gave up. They handed over the nuclear enriched materials, the dust that's already there buried, and the centrifuges, and they agreed we won't do anything for 20 years. Do you think that's would that be an acceptable outcome? Yeah, to give them 20 years.
They say the United States is not trustworthy. Iran hasn't proved trustworthy in any way on any of their promises to reduce.
I mean,
they've since what year was it? 76 or something.
79.
79.
On the embassy when they took over the embassy. Yeah, 79.
They've been vicious enemies.
Right. No, I think I would agree with that because 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, I think it doesn't matter. I think they're gonna deceive and sneak a program,
right.
And the only way I think to really avoid that is a different governmental mindset. So
that's one way for them to keep their basic materials with them alive.
Well, even if they gave up the materials that's buried, and then said, "Oh, we're not going to do anything for 20 years," I don't believe that.
We'd never know.
Right.
They'd say we did it. We got rid of it.
Right. Well, and we're not enriching anymore.
Right.
I think the lesson, the one, if the regime doesn't wind up getting completely changed, which unfortunately it might not, I think the one bad outcome of this is going to be, a government, a regime that is even more emboldened to race to a weapon because they see, they look at like North Korea. No one's bothering North Korea because they have a weapon. No one's bothering these different countries that manage to get a nuclear weapon. And I think the sad lesson they may have learned is if we can get to that point, it preserves our lifeline. It's our lifeline to never having to worry about being taken over. So that's why I think, this finish the job expression, I think, is a good one. I think the problem might be, unlike in wars which were more popular with the American people, particularly World War II and the beginning, at least Afghanistan was popular because it followed 9/11. But I don't know if the country has the stomach to do it. Unfortunately, it's because we're already divided politically. Half the Congress doesn't like anything that Trump does, even if it's good for the country, and so I think the problem may be here that it just may be politically impossible to do what really needs to be done just because of the political climate. At some point the war is going to need more money, right? You're going to need more money to continue. and that will require funding from Congress. And
but
with a split Congress like this, I'm not so sure you're going to get the appropriations, and that's a problem.
No,
to
listen,
continue.
They keep saying repeating a falsehood that by saying it over and over again, they kind of make it true. That Trump had no basis to starting a war against Iran. And it's like they were asleep for 20 years, not recognizing
Right. I mean,
that Iran has been through proxies attacking us and verbally saying that they want to destroy.
Look, every president
the
prior to
state.
Trump, Democrat and Republican, have said Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Everyone has said that. No president has ever said that's not the case.
True.
Who?
Biden or Obama said
I don't think
after 12 years, they were halted for 20.
To enrich,
the
but
word
not to have a weapon.
Well,
But the statement that they can never have a weapon has always been at least espoused as a philosophy, as a
when you
policy.
say they could have it after 12 years,
Didn't say they
that's
could have
never.
it. They said
that
they
was
can't
the agreement.
enrich.
That was the agreement that they had.
No, it was
after-
that they couldn't enrich, not that they couldn't have a weapon.
All right, but
My point is, every
manipulative.
president, but every president has said we can't have a weapon, but only one has acted on
The
that.
minute Trump got in, he canceled that agreement.
Correct. But my point is, and I think we're actually agreeing more than we're disagreeing, but my point is
How did that happen?
my point is that because every president has said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, nobody has acted upon making that happen except now.
Yeah.
And so where have the people who said in the decades prior Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, where are they now? Right? So unfortunately, I think that could wind up being an issue because, to keep going and even more, not just to keep going, but to actually do what you say, would require troops in the country. It's possible that with enough bombing and enough economic stranglehold, the regime could implode, and that people, the population could overthrow, and maybe you have a revolution where that's possible. But more likely, you need troops. You need hundreds of thousands of troops in the country, because there are a lot of people in the country that support the government. So you got to fight them when you come in.
And what's their militia? What's it called?
The IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard.
Yeah.
They're not.
That hasn't changed.
Right. So, and there's hundreds of thousands of those people. So, well armed. So, protecting the regime. So, how do you overthrow the regime? You have to overthrow 200,000 IRGC, which isn't done with bombs. It's done with people, with soldiers. So, I don't know how actually this happens, but let me ask this. Do you think there's a role for the former Shah of Iran's son, Reza Pahlavi? You see him on TV every so often. The Shah's son, not a big fan of the current regime, considering they kicked his father out and him.
I haven't seen a massive movement on the part of the Iranian people to bring that about. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, he might have a role. I think he could have a role like a figurehead king, like a king of England. This where they don't have any power, but they represent the historical continuity
Yeah, but
of the country.
that won't do anything because
then you have
the IRG would be in charge.
Well, no, I mean you got to get rid of them, of course. But I'm saying, if you could set up a new government after getting rid of the IRGC,
you can't get rid of the IRGC.
then how do you do regime change? You have to. The only way to get rid of them is to send troops in to get rid of them. That's what I'm saying. If you did that,
but you can't just do it.
No, but let's say you could. Let's say you accomplish what you say, and you get rid of the IRGC, and now you can put in a new government, like you said you need to do, which I agree.
If we put in our guy,
would you make Pahlavi have some role in your new government?
Maybe, but I'd still preferred that we put our MacArthur, our guy.
until you have the stability. But I think
we're positive that nothing of the disease or the cancer that was there before.
So we have a few more minutes to talk about. Let's talk about what came out after the failed negotiations in Pakistan. Trump instituted a naval blockade of Iranian ports. So, and we still have, the ceasefire kind of holding in place until next Tuesday, I think.
Yeah.
So, do you think that this blockade strategy was a good one? Do you think it puts pressure on Iran, or has just made a diplomatic solution less likely?
I think any forceful action against Iran is useful. And I don't buy this thing that it's illegal. Wars are illegal. You're killing people. You're killing innocent people. I don't buy into this thing that what we're doing is illegal.
So you think the blockade is a smart move because it does cripple their revenue source, which they say about 12 days. They have about 12 days of oil, and then they're going to be out of money.
It's worth trying, but it may even be counterproductive because it kills American business. The cost of deliveries has gone up dramatically. The cost of oil is unavailable. That was available before the blockade. So, but I'm in favor of trying anything, no matter how hostile, and not buying into this thing about it's against the international law.
What about destroying power plants and desalination? Is that okay, you think?
Yes.
Even though that hurts civilians?
You kill civilians in wars. We didn't worry about that with Hitler or with Japan. We didn't even ask permission to bomb with atom bombs.
So why did the U.S. agree to the Geneva war conventions? They shouldn't have.
They agreed to the League of Nations, and then they agreed to the UN. They're trying to be constructive, but none of that has ever worked. The UN is a nothing,
Okay, last question before we go.
Hasn't stopped any wars, hasn't.
Last question, because we're out of time, but
that's life. As human beings, we run out of time.
Yes. Why? We saw bad things happen to world economies when oil gets energy interruptions in the 70s, late. Why are markets near all-time highs, given what we're seeing with, potential disruptions, inflation, energy costs rippling through the economy? Why are markets at all-time highs?
I'm not sure, because I don't think it's well handled. The United States has enough oil to take care of our own needs many times over.
But we still pay the global price.
They say it's a global price. Right. If we wanted, we could just say, we're going to provide our people with oil at the price that we can deliver it from our own resources, instead of exporting.
That may be, but the question is, the increase in energy prices is likely to ripple inflation through the economy. So,
So we have to change.
But why are markets reacting the way they are, given what's
'Cause
happened? Yes, we're allowing prices of oil to go up,
Yeah,
but the result of that's inflation.
yeah.
So why do stock markets go up?
Go up? Because the economy has remained relatively strong.
How is that?
What do you
I
mean?
think that's going to happen if energy prices remain high. You think stock markets can stay where they are for any foreseeable future?
I'm not sure.
You think
we have an adaptive economy.
We seem to. That's the miraculous observation that I see. I don't get it. I don't get it. At some point, inflation went from 2.4 annualized to 3.54 something annualized. That's a big jump. At some point, does the Fed raise rates now? If inflation starts going up, that's going to kill the market. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I was hoping you did. All right. Well, thanks for the conversation. As always, we will have continued
Thank
discussion.
you for joining us. As always, I love you. Have a great week, a great year, a great life. Everything wonderful to you and all your loved ones. Each day of your life should be better than the day before unto eternity. God bless you. I love you, and I look forward to being with you next Wednesday, 6:30. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful every day of your life. You and all your loved ones. Bye.